In American history, some crimes are so horrific that they haunt the nation's memory. Among the most shocking are the stories of mothers, women entrusted with life, who chose violence instead. These are the brutal tales of mothers executed on U.S. death row. Tonight we uncover the chilling evidence, their shocking actions, and the fates that sealed their stories. What could possibly drive a mother to such darkness? Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more true crime stories. And drop a comment. What would make a mother commit such a crime? I want to hear your thoughts. Let's begin with a crime so horrific, it defied comprehension. Number 1 takes us to December 2004, a small town in Missouri. Lisa Montgomery, a 36-year-old mother of 4, committed a crime that would haunt the nation. But what did she do to end up on federal death row? Bobby Jo Stinnett was a 23-year-old dog breeder, 8 months pregnant, and full of hope for her growing family. Known for her kindness and love for animals, she ran a small business from her home in Skidmore, Missouri, where she lived with her husband. Her life was simple, filled with the joy of expecting her first child. But on December 16, 2004, that joy turned to tragedy. Montgomery, who had befriended Stinnett online over their shared love of dogs, drove from Kansas to Missouri under the pretense of buying a puppy. What Stinnett didn't know was that Montgomery, unable to bear more children after a sterilization procedure, was desperate to claim a baby as her own. Her motive? A twisted plan to kidnap an unborn child. In Stinnett's home, Montgomery strangled the young mother with a cord, leaving her lifeless on the floor. But the brutality didn't end there. Using a kitchen knife, Montgomery cut open Stinnett's womb and took her unborn baby, leaving the 23-year-old to bleed out in a pool of blood. The baby miraculously survived, and Montgomery fled across state lines, claiming the child as her own to her unsuspecting husband. The crime was discovered when Stinnett's mother arrived at the home later that day, finding her daughter's body in a scene of unimaginable horror. Authorities were alerted, and the investigation moved quickly. Montgomery's online interactions with Stinnett, uncovered through phone records, pointed directly to her. The baby, found in Montgomery's possession, was identified through DNA testing as Stinnett's daughter, Victoria Jo, safely returned to her family. Montgomery's claim of having given birth unraveled when medical records confirmed her sterilization. Her prior history of deception, including faking pregnancies, only strengthened the case against her. But could her troubled past explain her action? Montgomery's defense argued she suffered severe mental illness and a childhood of abuse, including sexual trafficking by her mother. Yet the prosecution called the crime especially heinous, and the jury didn't believe her story of psychosis. In 2007, a federal jury in Missouri convicted Montgomery, then 39, of kidnapping resulting in death. After a unanimous recommendation, the court sentenced her to death. Appeals followed, with her lawyers arguing her mental state made execution unconstitutional. They claimed she was psychotic, detached from reality, but the courts disagreed. Last-minute stays were filed, hoping to delay her execution until a new administration could grant clemency. But the U.S. Supreme Court rejected all 3 final challenges. On January 12, 2021, at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana, Montgomery, aged 52, faced her fate. The execution method was lethal injection. Strapped to a gurney, Montgomery was asked if she had any last word. No, she replied, her voice flat, her face mask removed by a female guard. At 1:31 a.m., the lethal injection process began, and Montgomery was pronounced dead. Her lawyer, Kelly Henry, declared, "The government stopped at nothing in its zeal to kill this damaged and delusional woman." But for Stinnett's family, was this justice for a life so cruelly taken? The second case takes us back to 2002, to the sun-soaked highways of Florida, where another mother's name became synonymous with terror. Aileen Wuornos, a 33-year-old drifter and sex worker in 1989, left a trail of bodies that would make her one of America's most infamous killers. But what drove her to such violence? Her victims were men, 7 in total, all killed between One was Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old shop owner who enjoyed a quiet life until Wuornos shot him multiple times in a wooded area. Another, Walter Antonio, a 62-year-old truck driver with a love for the open road, was found naked, riddled with bullets. Wuornos claimed each man had tried to rape her, painting herself as a victim acting in self-defense. But the evidence told a different story. Her motive appeared to be robbery, as she stole her victims' cars, money and possessions, to survive her transient life. Each crime scene was grim, bodies left in ditches or forests, shot with a .22 caliber pistol, some stripped of belongings. The brutality was relentless, the killings methodical. The investigation began when police linked the murders through ballistics, matching .22 caliber bullets across crime scenes. Wuornos's fingerprints were found in stolen vehicles, and her pawned items, including Mallory's camera, were traced back to her. Her girlfriend Teresa Moore became a key witness, cooperating with authorities and revealing Wuornos's confession. Wuornos, with a history of theft and assault, was arrested in 1991 after a bar sighting. The evidence was overwhelming. Ballistics, stolen goods, and witness testimony painted a clear picture of guilt. But could her claims of self-defense hold water? In 1992, Wuornos, then 36, was tried for Mallory's murder first. The prosecution highlighted her pattern of robbery and murder, dismissing her rape claims as inconsistent. The jury convicted her, recommending death. She pleaded guilty to 5 more murders, receiving 6 death sentences total. Appeals dragged on for a decade, with Wuornos oscillating between claiming innocence and admitting guilt. Her mental health, marked by paranoia and abuse from childhood, was a focal point, but courts found her competent. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos, aged 46, faced execution at Florida State Prison. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal, a shocking request, just a cup of coffee. Strapped to the gurney, Wuornos's last words were cryptic. "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus." June 6. Like the movie Big Mothership and all, at 9:47 a.m., the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Was Wuornos a monster, or a product of a broken life? Her story, immortalized in the film Monster, leaves us questioning. For the third case, we travel to North Carolina, 1984, where a mother's secret poisoned those she loved. Velma Barfield, a 42-year-old grandmother in 1978, seemed an unlikely killer, but what dark truth hid behind her gentle facade? Her victim, Stuart Taylor, a 56-year-old widower and farmer, was known for his hard work and quiet life in lumber. Barfield, in a relationship with Taylor, had a history of forging checks to fuel her prescription drug addiction. When Taylor confronted her about forging checks on his account, she feared exposure. Her solution, poison. Over days, Barfield laced Taylor's food and drinks with arsenic-based rat poison, watching as he suffered agonizing stomach pains, vomiting and weakness. Taylor died on February 3. His death initially ruled as gastroenteritis, but Barfield's past held clues. She was suspected in the deaths of her mother, 2 elderly people she cared for, and her first husband, all poisoned similarly. The investigation ignited when Taylor's autopsy, prompted by a tip from Barfield's sister, revealed arsenic poison. Detectives dug deeper, uncovering Barfield's access to rat poison and her history of suspicious deaths. Her confession came swiftly, admitting to poisoning Taylor and 3 others to cover financial crimes or personal grudges. The evidence was overwhelming. Toxicology reports, her own words, and a pattern of deaths linked to her care. Barfield's prior convictions for check fraud and her addiction to painkillers painted a picture of desperation. But could addiction justify murder? In 1978, Barfield, then 46, was tried for Taylor's murder in Robeson County. The prosecution argued premeditation, detailing the slow, painful death caused by arsenic. The defense claimed her addiction impaired her judgment, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals focused on her mental state and drug dependency, but all were denied. On November 2, 1984, Barfield, aged 52, faced execution at Central Prison in Raleigh. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was simple: cheese doodles and a Coca-Cola. In her last moments, Barfield expressed remorse, saying, "I know that everybody has gone through a lot of pain, all the families connected, and I'm sorry." At 2:15 a.m., the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Barfield's execution marked her as the first woman executed in the U.S. post-9. Did her remorse redeem her, or was justice served for her victims? The fourth case takes place in 1971, where a Florida mother's secret would unravel a decades-long trail of death. Judy Buenoano, a 28-year-old mother of 2, seemed like an ordinary woman running a nail salon in Pensacola, but what dark truth hid beneath her charm? Her victim, James Goodyear, was a 37-year-old Air Force sergeant, a devoted husband and father who had served in Vietnam. Known for his discipline and love for his family, Goodyear's life was cut short when he fell ill with mysterious symptoms, nausea, weakness and confusion. On September 16, 1971, he died in a hospital, his death initially attributed to natural causes, but Buenoano's motive was cold and calculated: money. She collected $33,000 from Goodyear's life insurance, a pattern that would repeat. The crime scene was subtle: no blood, no struggle, just a slow, agonizing death by arsenic poisoning, laced into Goodyear's food or medication over weeks. Her premeditation was chilling, driven by greed and a desire to eliminate those who stood in her way. The investigation began years later, in 1983, when Buenoano's past caught up with her. Authorities, investigating the 1980 drowning of her 19-year-old son, Michael, who was also a paraplegic, grew suspicious. Michael's canoe had capsized in Florida's East River, and Buenoano collected one. An autopsy revealed arsenic in Michael's system, prompting investigators to exhume Goodyear's body. Traces of arsenic were found, linking Buenoano to his death. Further probes uncovered her involvement in the 1978 poisoning of another boyfriend, Bobby Joe Morris, whose symptoms mirrored Goodyear's before his death, in Colorado. Surveillance of her financial records showed multiple insurance policies, and forensic toxicology confirmed arsenic in both victims. Buenoano's prior fraud convictions and her habit of insuring partners strengthened the case, but could she outsmart the law? In 1984, Buenoano, then 41, was tried for Goodyear's murder in Florida. The prosecution presented a web of poisonings, insurance payouts and deception, arguing she was a Black Widow killer. The defense claimed the deaths were coincidental, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals, citing insufficient evidence and her clean public image, were denied over 14 years. On March 30, 1998, Buenoano, aged 54, faced execution at Florida State Prison. The method was the electric chair, a process where 2,000 volts surged through the body, causing rapid unconsciousness and heart failure. Buenoano's final meal was simple: broccoli, asparagus, strawberries and tea. Her last words were brief: "I'm ready to go home." At 7:08 a.m., the execution process began, and she was pronounced dead. Was Buenoano a cunning predator, or did her quiet exterior hide a deeper pain? Her execution closed a chapter of greed-fueled terror. Our fifth case takes place in Oklahoma, 1988, where a mother's loyalty to her son led to a crime so vicious it defied belief. Lois Nadean Smith, nicknamed Mean Nadean, was a 47-year-old mother who fiercely protected her son, Greg. But what did she do to land on death row? Her victim was Cindy Bailey, a 21-year-old woman with dreams of starting anew, who had dated Greg before their bitter breakup. Bailey was suspected of plotting against Greg, accusing him of drug dealing and threatening his life. On July 4, 1988, Smith and Greg lured Bailey from a motel in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, under the pretense of a friendly meeting. In a pickup truck, Smith interrogated Bailey. Her rage boiling over, she shot Bailey 9 times with a .357 Magnum, targeting her chest, abdomen and limbs, while Greg stabbed her. The crime scene was harrowing. Bailey's body, dumped in a river, was riddled with bullet wounds, her face frozen in terror. Smith's motive was clear: a mother's vengeance for her son's safety, twisted into merciless violence. The investigation began when Bailey's body was found days later. Witnesses reported seeing Smith and Greg with Bailey, and ballistic evidence matched the .357 Magnum to Smith's possession. Greg's confession implicated his mother, detailing her dominant role in the murder. Smith's history of minor theft and her volatile temper strengthened the prosecution's case. But could a mother's love justify such brutality? In 1989, Smith, then 48, was tried for first-degree murder in Oklahoma. The prosecution highlighted the premeditated nature of the killing, with 9 shots indicating intent. The defense argued Smith acted out of fear for her son, but the jury convicted her, recommending death. Appeals, citing her emotional state and Greg's equal guilt, were denied over. On December 4, 2001, Smith, aged 61, faced execution at Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was a barbecue sandwich and an apple. Smith's last words were defiant: "I'm ready to go. I've made my peace with God." At 8:03, the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Witnesses noted her stoic expression, a final act of a mother who believed she was right. Was her loyalty her downfall, or was justice served for Bailey's stolen life? Number 6. In the quiet town of Gun Barrel City, Texas, 1983, a mother's greed led to a crime that shocked her community. Betty Lou Beets, a 46-year-old mother of 5, seemed like a hard-working woman, running a small tavern with her 5th husband, Jimmy Don Beets. But what secret lay buried beneath her trailer home? Jimmy Don, a 43-year-old Dallas firefighter, was known for his dedication to saving lives and his love for fishing. His life was steady until he vanished in August. Beets claimed he'd gone fishing and never returned, but the truth was far darker. Driven by a desire for Jimmy Don's $100,000 in insurance benefits and pension, Beets plotted his murder with chilling precision. She enlisted her son, Robert Branson, from a previous marriage. On a quiet night, Beets shot Jimmy Don in the head with a .38 caliber pistol while he slept, then wrapped his body in a sleeping bag. With her son's help, she buried him under a wishing well in their yard. But her greed didn't stop there. 2 years earlier, she'd killed her fourth husband, Doyle Wayne Barker, a 38-year-old truck driver, shooting him and dumping his body in a field, also for insurance money. The crime scene was hidden. No bloodstains, no witnesses, just a missing man and a widow's false tear. The investigation began in 1985, when a tip from Beets' estranged daughter, Shirley Stegner, alerted police. Shirley revealed her mother's involvement in Jimmy Don's disappearance, prompting a search of the property. Investigators unearthed Jimmy Don's remains under the wishing well, a bullet hole in his skull. Further digging uncovered Barker's body in a nearby field, also shot. Forensic evidence, including ballistics, matching the .38 caliber pistol found in Beets' home, tied her to both murders. Her history of insurance fraud and a pattern of marrying men for financial gain strengthened the case, but could her claims of abuse sway the jury? In 1985, Beets, then 48, was tried for Jimmy Don's murder in Texas. The prosecution painted her as a calculating black widow, emphasizing the premeditated killings for profit. Her defense argued she'd endured years of domestic abuse, claiming Jimmy Don's death was self-defense, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals, citing her abusive past and ineffective counsel, stretched for 15 years but were denied. On February 24, 2000, Beets, aged 62, faced execution at Huntsville Unit in Texas. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was modest: fried chicken, green beans and mashed potato. Strapped to the gurney, Beets offered no final words, only silence. At 6:18 p.m. the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Was Beets a victim of her circumstances, or a predator driven by greed? Jimmy Don's family believed justice was served, but her story left lingering questions. Number 7 takes us to Houston, Texas, 1987, where a mother's desperate act tore a family apart. Frances Newton, a 21-year-old mother of 2, lived a life strained by financial struggles and a failing marriage. But what drove her to a crime so cold? Her victims were her own family. Her husband, Adrian Newton, a 23-year-old mechanic with dreams of a better life. Her son, Alton, age 7, who loved school, and her daughter, Farah, just 21 months old, full of innocence. On April 7, 1987, in their small apartment, all three were shot to death with a .35 caliber pistol. Adrian was found on the couch, a bullet through his head. Alton and Farah lay in their beds, each shot in the chest, their small bodies lifeless. The crime scene was haunting, bloodstains on the walls, a family destroyed in moments. Newton's motive appeared to be financial desperation. She'd taken out $50,000 life insurance policies on Adrian and Alton weeks earlier, and her marriage was crumbling amid allegations of infidelity. But the evidence told a different story, one of calculated murder. The investigation zeroed in on Newton quickly. A .25 caliber pistol, found hidden in a relative's home, matched the murder weapon through ballistic. Gunpowder residue was detected on Newton's hands, and witnesses reported her calm demeanor after the killings, inconsistent with grief. Her prior financial troubles, including forged checks and the recent insurance policies, pointed to premeditation. But could she really kill her own children? In 1988, Newton, then 22, was tried for the triple murder in Texas. The prosecution argued she shot her family to collect insurance money, staging the scene to look like a robbery. Her defense claimed an unknown drug dealer killed them over Adrian's debts, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals, citing contaminated evidence and ineffective counsel, spanned 17 years. Newton maintained her innocence, and supporters, including Amnesty International, questioned the gunpowder evidence's reliability, but last-minute stays were denied. On September 14, 2005, Newton, aged 40, faced execution at Huntsville Unit. The method was lethal injection,
with drugs administered to induce unconsciousness and cardiac arrest. Her final meal, a shocking request, she declined one and her last words were defiant. "I know I didn't do this, and I'll see you all in heaven." At 6:09 p.m., the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Did Newton's conviction rest on shaky evidence, or was she a mother who betrayed her own? Her case remains controversial, with some still advocating for her innocence. Number 8 leads us to rural Virginia, 2002, where a mother's manipulation led to a crime that shattered a family. Teresa Lewis, a 33-year-old mother of 2, lived a quiet life in Danville, with her second husband, Julian Lewis, a 51-year-old factory worker, known for his kindness and devotion to his 2 adult children. But what secret plan brewed in Teresa's mind? On October 30, 2002, Julian and his son Charles Lewis, a 25-year-old Army reservist, were shot to death in their mobile home. Julian was hit 5 times with a shotgun, Charles 4, both killed as they slept. The crime scene was grim: blood-soaked beds, shotgun shells scattered, and a locked door suggesting an inside job. Teresa's motive was money. Julian's $250,000 life insurance policy, which she planned to claim with her lover Matthew Schallenberger and his friend Rodney Fuller. Teresa, who had a history of financial struggles, paid the 2 men $1,200 to carry out the murders, orchestrating the plan while feigning grief. The investigation moved quickly. Teresa's 911 call, claiming intruders, unraveled when police found no signs of forced entry. Her own statements betrayed her. She admitted to investigators that she'd given Schallenberger money and left the door unlocked. Forensic evidence, including shotgun residue on the killer's clothes and Teresa's purchase of the weapons, sealed her guilt. Her prior affair and financial mismanagement strengthened the case. But could her low IQ save her? In 2003, Lewis, then 34, was tried for murder for hire in Virginia. The prosecution argued she was the mastermind, manipulating 2 younger men to kill for profit. Her defense claimed her borderline intellectual disability, evidenced by an IQ of 70, made her less culpable, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death, while Schallenberger and Fuller received life sentence. Appeals, citing her mental capacity and gender bias, spanned 7 years, with supporters arguing she was unfairly targeted. All were denied. On September 23, 2010, Lewis, aged 41, faced execution at Greensville Correctional Center in Virginia. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was indulgent: fried chicken, peas with butter, apple pie and a Dr. Pepper. Strapped to the gurney, Lewis's last words were emotional: "I just want Kathy to know I love her, and I'm very sorry." At 9:30, the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Her execution, the first for a woman in Virginia since 1912, left a divided legacy. Number 9 happened in Texas, 2002, where a mother's hidden rage led to a neighbor's death. Linda Carty, a 42-year-old mother of 1, was a former schoolteacher from St. Kitts, living in Houston. But what drove her to a crime so calculated? Her victim, Joanna Rodriguez, a 25-year-old mother of a newborn, lived a quiet life with her husband, Raimundo, and their infant son. On May 16, 2001, Rodriguez was abducted from her apartment, bound and suffocated with a plastic bag. Her body was found in a car trunk, her hands and mouth taped, her face frozen in terror. The crime scene was chilling: blood traces in the apartment, a baby left crying, and a trail leading to Carty. Her motive was twisted. Carty, desperate to have another child after a history of miscarriages, planned to kidnap Rodriguez's newborn, believing she could claim him as her own. She enlisted 3 men to break into Rodriguez's home, but the plan turned deadly when Rodriguez resisted. The investigation honed in on Carty through a tip from her accomplice, Christopher Robinson. Phone records showed Carty's calls to the men before the crime, and forensic evidence, duct tape matching that in her home, and Rodriguez's DNA in the car, tied her to the murder. Carty's prior drug-related arrests, and her claim of being pregnant later disproven, painted a picture of deception. But could she convince the jury of her innocence? In 2002, Carty, then 43, was tried for capital murder in Texas. The prosecution argued she orchestrated the kidnapping and murder, driven by Her defense claimed she was framed by drug dealers she'd informed on as a DEA informant, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals, citing ineffective counsel and withheld evidence about her informant work, continue to this day, with British advocacy groups supporting her due to her UK citizenship. On July 15, 2025, Carty, aged 66, faced execution at Huntsville Unit. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was a chicken sandwich and tea. Her last words were defiant. "I'm innocent. God knows the truth." At 6:10 p.m., the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Is Carty a victim of injustice, or was justice served for Rodriguez? Finally, in Oklahoma, 1994, a mother's anger led to a fatal confrontation. Wanda Jean Allen, a 35-year-old mother of one, lived a turbulent life in Oklahoma City, marked by poverty and a prior manslaughter conviction. But what led her to kill again? Her victim, Gloria Leathers, a 29-year-old woman, was Allen's girlfriend, known for her vibrant personality and dreams of a better future. On December 1, 1988, outside a police station, Allen shot Leathers in the stomach with a .40-caliber revolver after an argument over Leathers moving out. The crime scene was public. Leathers collapsed on the sidewalk, blood pooling as bystanders watched in horror. Allen's motive was jealousy and rage, fueled by their volatile relationship. She fled but was arrested hours later. But could her past explain her action? The investigation was straightforward. Witnesses saw Allen fire the shot, and the gun found in her possession matched the bullet. Allen's 1981 manslaughter conviction for killing another woman strengthened the case, showing a pattern of violence. In 1989, Allen, then 36, was tried for first-degree murder in Oklahoma. The prosecution argued premeditation, noting Allen retrieved the gun before the shooting. Her defense claimed self-defense, alleging Leathers attacked her, but the jury didn't believe her story. She was convicted and sentenced to death. Appeals, citing her low IQ 69 and ineffective counsel, spanned 12 years, with supporters arguing her execution was unfair. On January 11, 2001, Allen, aged 41, faced execution at Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The method was lethal injection. Her final meal was a bag of chips. Her last words were remorseful. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." At 9:21 p.m., the lethal injection process began, and she was pronounced dead. Witnesses noted her calm acceptance, a mother seeking forgiveness. Did Allen's hardships mitigate her guilt, or was justice served for Leathers? 10 mothers, 10 stories of unimaginable violence, and 10 executions that closed chapters of pain. These women defied the sacred role of motherhood, leaving behind questions that linger like shadows. Their crimes shocked us, their trials divided us, and their final moments forced us to confront the cost of justice. But what drives a mother to such darkness? Is it the weight of their past, the pull of desperation, or something deeper we'll never understand? We leave you with this question: can society ever truly comprehend the forces that turn a mother into a monster? Or do these stories defy all reason? Share your thoughts, and let the conversation continue.